The biggest story in the Premier League over the last couple of weeks is undoubtedly the takeover at Newcastle United. We spoke before the game this evening about the on-pitch difficulties that the new owners are going to have ahead and the situation around Steve Bruce. But we also said we needed more time to discuss the actual new owners themselves, who are, in some cases, mired in controversy. We've got the 10% of Amanda Staveley, we've got the 10% of the Reuben family, and we've got the 80% controlled by PIF, the Saudi Arabia investment fund. Gary, what's your take on them as new owners coming into the Premier League?
Look, it's a complicated and there isn't a right and wrong answer. Anybody who says there's no way they should be allowed in English football, you can't disagree.
A lot of people are saying that.
Yeah, and you can't disagree with that point of view. I do disagree with it, but you can't say they're wrong because ultimately, there's no doubt that, Saudi Arabia has some pretty appalling record on human rights. There's no doubt there have been changes in terms of women partaking in economic life in the last few years, but it's still well away from where it should be. We obviously are aware of the killing a few years ago. So there are things that they do that aren't accepted in what would be a normal world. And that's something that needs to change. I've always had the view, and to be fair, that, Abu Dhabi are the owners of Manchester City. Their human rights record isn't exactly wonderful. Qatar have had World Cups, Russia have had World Cups. We've seen countries like South Africa a number of years ago have had major issues over the last sort of 30, 40 years. I do believe sport should be a force for good. I do believe sport should be a force for political change. I do think sport should rise above. I think governments have to challenge each other. So the UK government has to work with Saudi Arabia to ensure that they improve their record. Sport, I believe, should try and assist with societal change. I believe that we should allow them over our side of the fence. I believe that we're better off sat around the table with these nations and we're better off working with them to create change in sport than saying, no, you're not coming in and you're not, or, you stay over there, you're banned. So that is my opinion. So countries like Qatar, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, China, Russia, and there are many more. I don't think we're particularly great always on our human rights. So my view is that we leave a lot to be desired in certain issues.
Well, the accusation is that they are, of course, using sport to turn our eyes away from the human rights abuses and
do you know something, Dave?
Potentially worse that you're talking about.
Dave, there has been more of a light shone on Saudi Arabia's human rights issues in the last month than there ever has been in the last 10 years, 15 years that I can remember through sport. So what Saudi Arabia can't do now is shy away from it. It can't be ignored because it's surrounding us every single week with Newcastle in the ownership. So my view is that it's like Qatar having the World Cup. The light is shining on them so bright that they're having to make changes. Same with Abu Dhabi. So we can say that they're coming in and it's sport washing, and you can adapt that view and you can have that view, and I'm not saying that you would be wrong having that view. I see it from the other side, that it shines a light on them. It creates an enormous amount of pressure on them to change, because the reality of it is they are coming into the Premier League, which is one of the sort of strongest brands of sport in the world. It's watched everywhere, and everybody is talking about Saudi Arabia, the killing of the journalist, the human rights issues, the fact that women are not treated equally or right, the fact that there's LGBTQ issues that are enormous over there and that people are in jail. So my view on it is, I'd rather have them around the table to see them face to face, to talk about it and challenge it, than I would say, no, get over there, I don't want you anywhere near us, and they're gone forever and they can get on with doing what they want. I think sport should be changed.
No, I agree with a lot of what you've said, but when you're talking about situations in that country, is there not sometimes something where it's actually, you've crossed the line? You can't actually say, OK, we will sort of forget about that, we'll try and help you move forward, be different, you're getting exposed a little bit more, people have got eyes on you a little bit more now. What you're talking about with Saudi Arabia, is this the actual thing that you're talking about with the journalist, is that actually a line that you can't cross?
No, of course there are lines that they've crossed, of course there are lines that they've never even
got.
That
not, should that not be too much for the Premier League to say, hang on, that's...
Well, maybe you could argue that. I'm not particularly proud of us walking away from, to be fair, women in Afghanistan a few months ago as the UK. I'm not particularly proud of that. Now, I'm not saying that's the line, but I'm not always proud of what we do. I'm not always proud of what other nations like America do in terms of sort of things on human rights. I'm not always proud of China and Russia. They're all in the Premier League, by the way, these nations, represented by people who are either close to government or represented by the state.
OK, so do you think that there could ever be a regime or anyone else who gets involved in the Premier League where they could be stopped taking over the club? So if you wouldn't be stopping the Saudis coming into Newcastle, what would it take, do you think, or should there ever be anybody stop taking over a Premier League club?
Jamie,
North Korea, for example.
I long for a world where, to be fair, there can be harmony. And I do believe sport can be a massive driver for change and can bring harmony. Everybody loves sport. Everybody drops the political side. Everybody, when there's an Olympics or whether there's a World Cup, everybody comes together. I went to Russia 3 years ago, watched the World Cup, and for a month it was like it could be the perfect place on the world because football, the South Americans dancing in the streets, the Europeans, the sort of everything that was there was a party. I'd like to think that creates change in Russia. I'm not saying it does, but I'd like to think that sport can drive change and drive standards and drive equality and inclusion.
Sorry, when you talk about change...
Are you challenging me on this?
No, I'm not challenging. What I'm trying to say to you is, you're talking about Russia in that sort of 3 weeks. You could have been anywhere. Is that not what... That's the whole point of what you're talking about in terms of sport watching. So you're talking about going to Russia. You felt you could have been anywhere. The Olympic Games, whatever it was, but then it goes back.
But I hope that small steps can be. I mean, you're never going to change these nations overnight. You're never going to change them overnight. It's always going to be small steps. If you think about where we were sort of 1,000 years ago, and where we were 800 years ago, and where we were 600 years ago, there were some pretty horrific things happening in this country a long time ago. And through small steps over time, you get to a point whereby you like to think you have a liberal democratic society, even though I don't always believe that's the case, but we do have what would be a place that up until quite recently has been inclusive to most of Europe and most of the world. Slightly different now where we're stopping people coming in and we're not looking after people as much. However, I do believe you make small steps. So if we think Saudi Arabia is here at this moment in time in terms of its standards, we either keep them there and never allow them in and let them get on with what they're doing, or we actually bring them over through sport, pressurise them, drive change and let them make small steps at a time. I know there has been small steps in Saudi Arabia in the last few years, nowhere near enough, but I don't believe it's the right way for sport to act, to not bring them around the table and try and drive change. That is my personal view. It's my personal view. Others would say, no, keep them where they are, they don't deserve to be here. And I can't disagree with them, that's their view. I believe we should try and be harmonious, we should try and bring people together, we should try and be collaborative, we should try and have conversation and try and work with people to try and change if we think the standards are lower than they should be. That's how I believe it should be. Government should be doing that, but sport should be doing that.